So I am just coming on today to introduce you to Anshal,
Yes, it's Anshal. Yes.
Anshal Road. And Anshal is a loan officer with Monument Home Loans. I can read it off his background. And he's one of my favorite lenders. So I just wanted to take a minute to introduce him. Anshal, take it away. Tell us about you.
Yeah, I have this background because you really don't want to see the mess in my office here. So we're just covering
we're,
that up.
we're
But
all going through that. And I think it's extra bad because it's a snow day today.
yeah, well, thank you, Melinda. Yeah, so my name is Anshal Road, loan officer with Monument Home Loans, and we're located here locally in Ballston, in the Arlington area. And we're a small, unique lender, and we specialize in a lot of different things.
So what do you think? What are the benefits of actually having a local lender?
So the benefits of having a local lender is we really understand the area, and all our employees are local in that, everything is done in-house. So you know that you don't have to talk to somebody across the country to get something done. You know that we're all here ready to help you immediately. And the cool thing is we all work 24/7. So we're pretty much always available to answer emails, texts, phone calls. And we also have a unique ability to close loans faster than any other lender. I believe on record, we've closed a loan in literally 2 weeks. And since we take customer service so importantly, we've also never missed a closing date. So
Perfect. So then it sounds like because your underwriters, processors, et cetera, are all local, that makes it easier for you to get the loan closed in a more timely fashion.
absolutely.
And obviously, as a real estate agent, and if we're talking to buyers here, that's very meaningful because if a seller needs a fast closing, then that might enable the buyer to be more competitive by offering a super fast closing date.
Yeah, as you know, as a real estate agent, maybe one of the hardest things you come about is the high competition in the
Yeah,
marketplace. And
for sure.
sometimes it's that little thing that gets us, between us and maybe one other offer. It could start with 10 offers and then they, narrow it down to us and somebody else. And if we can waive a financing contingency or tell them we can close in 3 weeks, sometimes that's what it takes to win the deal. So that's important.
Yeah, it definitely does help. And if it's even more motivational for the seller to sell fast if the home is vacant or they have it staged because they're still paying for the vacant home, even and they probably have started paying a mortgage elsewhere. In addition to that, they're still paying the carrying costs of the home, like the homeowners association fee or the electric bill and their insurance. And your insurance often changes when the home is vacant, and a vacant home can be more expensive to insure as well. So I think that it would definitely make a buyer more competitive if they had the ability to close faster. With that said, what kind of documentation does a buyer need to provide to get a loan through that quickly? Because I feel like you really need to have all their documentation and ducks in a row to get something done that quickly.
Absolutely. So part of the process is before they even start shopping for a home, I'll pretty much issue a pre-approval letter. And this allows them to shop with confidence, knowing that, a seller will accept an offer from them. So that means we pretty much get a full application, a credit report, making sure all of those are in check. We verify their assets through the bank statements. We get their 30 days pay stubs, 2 years W-2s, and even tax returns to make sure all that matches up
Mhm.
with the IRS. And we do all those checks up front to make sure that we know with absolute certainty that they'll qualify for the loan before they even put an offer on the property.
Right.
So
And I guess I would ask you then, is it important for them to, I mean, what would you would advise them? Let me rewind for a second. So I think first of all, it's really good timing because a lot of people are gathering this documentation for tax time, right?
absolutely, yes. This is a great season. Also, weather hopefully will start warming up again. We had kind of
Yeah.
a late winter. So
Do
um,
they need to have their 2020 taxes filed or prepared in order to qualify for a loan right now?
no, typically we don't actually require tax returns until April, until the deadline
The
before
deadline?
they have to
Okay.
start doing extensions. Yeah. Most people though, what I've noticed is they'll typically start sending their 2020 W-2s by now because most of them have received it in the mail. So minimum 2018, 2019. If they have 2020, great.
Okay.
send it.
That's good to know. I'm putting that in my notes because I know that that's coming up right now. We did have a transaction recently and where I think the individual was self-employed. And so in order to count that income for 2020, they needed that second year of self-employment taxes. They conditioned for him to actually file his taxes. And I believe that the IRS announced recently that they're not even accepting returns electronically until mid-February. So I know that that's got people a little hung up right now.
Yeah, so self-employed's a little weird right now with COVID. They're starting to ask a lot of extra stuff, and that's just to make sure the self-employed people are still in business. So they'll even ask for invoices and paid receipts to prove that they're not just, for example, let's say you ran a salon, right? We want to make sure you're open, and so showing like sales receipts would count if you're in the business of
Selling a
contracting. You need
product or
invoices and things. So yeah, they're asking for that, and sometimes even bank statements to, verify the history of, their P&L and whatnot. Luckily, we like the weird, complicated self-employment loans, so we'll take them, and we'll make sure we do all our checks up front before
yeah.
we get into a process and take the borrower through a ringer. So
Yeah, and I think that it's important to do that. And that would be a good message for us to send to buyers is that, first of all, be prepared for additional documentation to be required, and also for it to be maybe a lengthier process up front of getting pre-approved so that they're very well prepared as they go into this process. And in the event that we need to toss our ring or hat in the ring with a 2-week closing, let's say, then all the ducks really are in a row and you're ready to rock. And I think that, again, that short closing would be very competitive. And then I wanted to ask you too, in our current market, we've been really struggling to get VA loans through because of the fact that so many people think that the VA process is so much more rigorous than qualifying for other loans. And I tend to disagree with that. I find that our VA buyers are very well qualified because they do have to go through a lot of extra processes in order to get pre-approved to use their VA. And that just because they're utilizing that unique 100% down program does not necessarily mean that they don't have any money down. It's just simply a choice not to put it down, right?
yeah, so I think it's fundamentally important to understand that this program exists because our veterans are there to sacrifice a lot to, help ensure our freedoms for this country. And I hold that really dear to my heart. And I thank every veteran
Yeah.
who I have the pleasure of helping, buy a home or do a refi or whatnot. And with that, there comes a certain cost, and taxpayers help, fund some of that, but also, there's funding fees and whatnots. When I'm taking an application for a VA loan, there are a few extra forms I have to fill out, and there's just extra analysis involved just to make sure that the veteran
Yeah.
can afford the payment. But other than that, just getting a certificate of eligibility ensures they have the entitlement available to even afford and purchase the home.
Yep.
A lot of that stuff is done back end. And for us personally, as Monument Home Loans, we've never struggled with any of the back end work that's required to get people to closing on time. So let the
Sure.
lender worry about all the other complications, which sometimes are a lot, but we try and make it as easy enough for the borrower as possible. So
Well, I think a common misconception in the market for agents really, and I don't count myself as one of them because I do know a lot about the VA loan, and I have lots of clients that have leveraged the VA loan, and it's afforded them a home they may not have otherwise qualified for. But again, it doesn't mean that they're not well financially qualified. They go through the same process as a conventional buyer, if not additional steps. But I think the common misconception from agents is that the VA appraisal and inspection process is more rigorous. And as a result, say hi to my dog, Ozzy. Um, as a result, that there's a lesser chance that that loan will close. And I really only think that that comes into play in the event that the home is in less than average condition. I've had agents concerned about um, things like the roof maybe being old or some of the systems being older. And
Hey,
I've
Melinda,
never
sorry
had a
to
challenge
interrupt.
with
I
that.
lost you briefly there. So
Oh, bummer.
if you guys see me looking down, it's me texting Melinda to tell her I lost you. But I think we're back now. So
Yeah. So I was just saying that I think that it's kind of a common misconception that the VA appraisal process is so intense that a home has to be in stellar condition to pass. And that has not been my experience. Yes, the appraiser is looking for certain things. They want to make sure that the roof is not leaking or doesn't look like it needs to be replaced that day. They want to make sure that there are safety features in place, kind of like I know that I've had a handrail come back, but there are also work throughs for that where agents and their buyer and seller can work to get those things done. And what I want to say to agents is that they should not shy away from the VA loan, and they should not be concerned that the VA buyer is less stable or less has less ability to close on a loan than a conventional purchaser.
sure. And I guess so I would say on the VA loan, it's not so much the process itself, it's really who's handling it. And if you have somebody experienced who can get it done quickly, that's important. Yes, there's some back end stuff to it, and what it really boils down to is, what's that lender's pipeline look like? How quickly are they getting things done? Those things are important. Sometimes at a bigger bank, you're going to find that there's a little more, you know, stuff you have to go through.
Right.
And sometimes they'll ask for 45-day rate locks on a VA. So it could take up to 45 days just to get through that additional stuff. However, we understand that, it's competitive. We need to close in 30 days and sometimes sooner. So we'll take the extra measures to get it done faster.
Awesome. Um, so tell me about some of the loan programs that you have right now. What's your lowest down payment conventional loan available?
Yeah, so for first-time homebuyers, we typically ask for 3% down on a conventional loan, especially if your credit score is typically above 700. I would always recommend conventional, just because if you don't put the 20% down, you'll have the PMI attached to it, but that usually goes away after 20%. FHA is great for people with maybe lower credit scores or have some income struggles. That's definitely a better option with higher debt to income ratios. The problem with FHA is that that MIP, which is similar to PMI, it never goes away. So that's something
And
to consider.
for first-time home buyers, we need to tell them what PMI and MIP is.
Sure. So PMI is private mortgage insurance, and that's just to insure the lender to make sure that in case there's a default, the lender will be covered.
Right.
And that's usually in a situation where there's not enough equity from not putting a high enough down payment.
Okay.
It's not meant to scare anybody away. Homeownership is still important, and you should get your foot in the door as soon as possible.
Yeah, and you and I were just talking the other day that a 1% increase in rates can drop your buying power very quickly. So not having a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm just going to wait till the market crashes. Well, first of all, no one can predict the future. So we don't know when this market is going to change. And the only way that we know it's changing is when we actually see the changes, right? You put a home on the market and it doesn't sell the first weekend, or your buyer is finding that they're able to negotiate a lot more than they were in the past, right? That's when we know that the shift is here. But I do hear some first-time home buyers saying, oh, it's too competitive, I'm just going to wait. My big concern for them is one of the things that could really slow this market down is an increase in interest rates. And if those interest rates increase, then they will end up paying more for less of a home, right? So they might have qualified to buy a $350,000 home,
Yeah.
but now they only qualify to buy a $300,000 home. And so at the end of the day, waiting could cost you more than buying in this very hot market where people are tripping over themselves and making higher offers above list price and waiving their contingencies, etc. So I know that can be really intimidating to first-time home buyers. So I wanted, to reinforce with you that waiting could actually be much more costly in the long run.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I'm doing his refi, and he was telling me that I think it was just 6 months ago his house was valued at X amount, and he looked at it yesterday and he's like, dude, it jumped $60,000. I mean,
Yeah.
this is insane. So if rates go up, and this is the number one question I get all the time from people is whether it's at a you know, a dinner or whatever, is
Pre-pandemic dinner.
what are rates at right now, and what do you think they're going to be in the future? And it's hard
Oh,
because
let me get out my crystal ball.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Let me get out my crystal ball. We're in weird times. It's very volatile, and you
Yeah.
never know what's going to end up happening. We found that there's a small uptick recently, but it's hard to tell. You know, it's really, really hard to tell. So
Yeah, we don't know what rates look like in the future. And honestly, in these times, I mean, this is unprecedented. We don't know what things look like in a pandemic. I really thought that the market would pump the brakes last March when we, went through our first iteration of lockdown, so to speak, and it has been the complete opposite of that. So it's really hard for any of us to predict what it looks like. But what I can say with certainty is that a higher rate reduces your buying power. And quite frankly, I'd rather pay more for a home knowing that if that price went down, I'm still paying an incredibly low interest rate. And as long as I don't need to sell, I'm in a great position where if I just stay in that home long enough or rent it out if I really needed to and needed to relocate, at least I know that that real estate is going to come back. It's one of the best investments in the world. And it certainly, in my opinion, can be safer than the stock market, depending on how you're investing. So I really, again, just to close the loop on that, really want to encourage people that are on the fence about buying that if they're well qualified and financially stable, they should definitely dip their toes in the water and get started.
yeah, now it goes by this saying, right? Would you rather pay somebody else's mortgage, or would you rather pay your own mortgage?
Right. You're always paying someone's mortgage. It's just a matter of whether it's theirs or yours. And that is the difficult part of renting is you're either lining someone else's pockets or your own, right? Because your home can be a great piggy bank, plus you can put sweat equity into it, plus then we have the natural market appreciation. And again, yes, we could go into some sort of long-term bust. I don't foresee that happening, but again, my crystal ball has yet to work for me. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to your question about our programs, we actually even have 100% financing now
really,
for, yeah, for certain areas and certain borrowers who are eligible. It's basically through a fund, and they help, you know, people who are looking to buy for the first time.
yeah,
Yeah, we can go over the details for anybody who is really, really motivated by buying a home, but may not have the money for a down payment.
right.
There might be some options, and we might even have some options for you. So
That's awesome. And I think that some of our home sellers and also agents out there, again, need to understand that just because someone is putting a low down payment down doesn't mean that A, they don't have a larger down payment, or B, that they're not financially stable.
yes, yes,
All of those loan programs require rigorous, financial checks, so to speak. And they go through underwriting or at least desktop underwriting prior to getting a pre-approval letter. So I think it's important to communicate that. It's a tough market though, and it's good to know that there's so many options for buyers that don't have a large down payment.
yeah, absolutely. Yep,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
absolutely.
And
Yep, it was exciting.
Anshul, what is your phone number if anybody needs to give you a call?
Sure, absolutely. So my phone number is 703-593-6635.
And spell out your email address for us.
Sure. So my email is my first name, Anshal, Anshal, at monumenthomeloans.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anshul. It was great to see you.
Absolutely, Melinda. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.